It's Monday, it's that time again. This week we go deep on the important stuff, the stuff the media is not talking about. Inventory in our market, unbelievably low. This week I'm fortunate enough to have David Crowell in here. We deep dive on the market, interest rates, mortgage, the future. Don't miss it. Market Monday. Bluffton market this week, more the same, right? Like low inventory, like almost nothing coming on the market.
Absolutely. We are continuing a state of affairs that only intensifies, and that is very, very tight inventory.
It's something that we're talking about on our team constantly because all the doomsday predictions of prices going down require a lot of inventory coming on the market.
That's correct.
Right?
That's correct.
And it's not happening.
The supply demand, the very, very most basic truth of economics, the relationship between supply and demand, is way out of whack. We have lots more people who want to live here than we have property.
That's right.
And the property continues to tighten. All other characteristics absolutely pale next to that basic one.
Correct.
So on a given day, you can have a little mini boom in listings. On another given day, you can have 3 or 4 properties that sell for below listing price, and everyone gets agitated and interprets that data.
It's a misinterpretation of the numbers, isn't
That's
it?
correct.
That we're seeing right now?
That's correct.
I mean, I can see that there's maybe a little pressure in the ultra luxury market right now, just because of the state of the economy, that people are a little bit nervous about spending a lot of money on a second home or something that's not necessary in light of all the discussions. And if you take that, off the top, those high-priced property sales off the top, even just a couple of them on a yearly basis, it pushes the average number down lower. But if you look at one specific property and track that property through sales, the price of that property continues to go up fairly significantly. Isn't that what you're seeing?
That's absolutely the case. Remember that everything that you hear on television and everything that you hear in terms of expert analysis is done on a very broad spectrum. These are national data figures that then are interpolated to our local markets. Very, very shaky way of interpreting the numbers. Just to give you an example, here in Bluffton or Hilton Head, the purchase of a home in Colleton River bears no relationship whatsoever to the purchase of a home in Hampton Hall.
And they're neighbors.
And they're all neighbors, but they bear no relationship.
Yeah.
Major market, regional market, local market, and then neighborhood.
A couple of those Bluffton neighborhoods have raised their fees significantly, and now they have a lot of inventory, and they're not selling it.
That's correct.
But that is, that is not indicative.
If you try and interpret something from that,
that's right,
without knowing the specifics,
that's right,
you get the wrong answer.
That's why you need to see a local professional that understands the nuances of a local market that can help you make a good decision. Speaking to that, we looked at basically 4 articles this week. 2 of the articles said, wait a minute, this whole market crash that we've been talking about for a year, it's not going to happen. The other 2 articles are saying that it is going to happen. There's no agreement, it's all clickbait, right?
It's very, very, very smart people trying to figure out a never seen before set of circumstances. We're a society that's coming off COVID in the mega market. We have a worldwide energy shortage and recession already in place, which absolutely impacts our data here. We have a stock market that can't decide whether it's going to blow through the roof or go through the toilet on a daily basis.
Yes, on an hourly basis.
Yes. Remember that housing represents 41% of the consumer price index, the number that's studied so closely about inflation. We are the biggest part. It's a very, very difficult to track indicator because housing means so much to the economy, and all the other elements are out of the control of the Fed, out of the control of the government.
I feel like over the last 6 months, every talking head was saying the same thing. Real estate was going to crash. We haven't been saying that. I just haven't seen anything that supports that. But that seemed to be the consensus. A lot of people are backing off of that. A lot of really smart people are backing off of those predictions. There's an article it was in Inman. It was written by Matthew Gardner. And it's probably the best article that I've read about what is going on. And number one is there is no housing bubble. Right? That was the number one thing that he talked about. And he talked about something that I have been talking about a lot, and that inventory is not going up because people are staying put.
Right.
This increase in interest rates have caused many people to say, I'm good right here, right now.
There's a couple of things that do that. What Dan's referring to is the fact that folks who were lucky enough to get a mortgage in 2020-21 got a mortgage in the low 3s or maybe even the high 2s. So that's a thing to be cherished. That absolutely slows you down if you're thinking of moving. Now, one of the things that it's doing is allowing people to move here, leaving behind a rented house that they now make money on, because the payment on that 2.875 mortgage is small enough so that they're able to rent the left behind house for a premium. It leads to all sorts of unexpected events. When you hear people saying, well, houses got so overpriced, we're going to have another bubble here. There's nothing to indicate a bubble in house values right now. Whenever you hear that come up in conversation, that's PTSD from 2008.
Conversely, Fortune magazine comes out and says these 49 housing markets to see home prices fall over 15%, and Hilton Head makes the list at 15.6% on this list. You know what their method for determining this is? What went up by the most during the pandemic. Now, our market still had not recovered its losses completely from 2008.
From 2008.
Right? So it doesn't take into account what the value of the market was prior to the pandemic. And I feel like this market was undervalued compared to, markets that I might know down in Florida. They had completely recovered from 2008, but we hadn't. So we had to make that back before we really started appreciating. So
there's another thing that it doesn't take into account, and that we found to be one of the most dominant pieces of the analysis, the financial analysis that we did for the two boom years, 2020 and 2021. What it doesn't take into account is the value differential between the property that's being left behind and the property that's being purchased here. In other words, your dollars go further here. So how can we be overpriced if the crappy little house in the suburbs of New Jersey that sells for $1 million allows you to buy basically a McMansion here for $650,000?
One of the things I was thinking about this weekend that kind of coincides with that is Microsoft is building, as an example, a huge campus in Atlanta. They're relocating parts of their company all over the country. And they have a big spot that they're developing in Atlanta and moving a lot of executives there. Very, very high paying jobs. I would bet more than one or two of those people will choose to have a second home. We're in that radius of, that's a big market for us, Atlanta, second homes here. And, that is part of the shift that has happened where people can now work differently. Organizations have kind of decoupled their headquarters and spread out across the country, typically to more favorable business markets. And those change the opportunities that a place like Hilton Head has. So the pandemic and allowing people work from home, that made a big difference in our values, because it allowed people in a place that didn't have a lot of industry outside of tourism and real estate, right? It allowed people with high-paying jobs to live and work here that otherwise wouldn't have happened.
Absolutely.
And then as we're seeing these large companies relocate, many of them to South Carolina and Georgia, that creates another opportunity that just changes our valuation.
That does. The salaries that these folks bring changes the valuation, because remember, most of our value base here is calculated on retirement income. What is a reasonable cost of housing for a semi-retired or retired person? Only in the last 3 or 4 years have we seen our employment base begin to change. So we're now seeing households with earned income that is significant. In the past, I always made the joke that if you dropped a bomb in Hilton Head, you might hit 3 people with W-2s. There's basically either everybody's retired or they're in the service industry. But now that's really, truly changing, to your point.
Yeah.
The third thing is the value, I come back to it again, is the value differential. So the income differential is changing. That influences the price of houses here. The value differential is massively different. The California folks, Microsoft's moving here, the California folks think that the real estate here, like discount cheap.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Because they're selling a ranch house for $1.6 million,
Yep.
$1.7 million, and they're getting their pick of the market.
That's what the article is saying, that they're buying something in Atlanta for a quarter of what they were tied in for San Francisco.
This is good.
So now they have money to buy a second home over on Hilton Head because of proximity.
It's super good news for us.
Yeah.
If you're in the market, stay in the market, stay educated. Don't be expecting a 40% off bargain. It's not going to happen.
Yeah,
I don't see any indicator.
Yeah,
and this is coming from a lender.
You'll be really disappointed a year from now if you do that. Right? Because prices are going to go up at least another 10, 15% this next year. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about mortgage. What's been going on the last couple of weeks in mortgage? What's the news?
Mortgage rates, it's interesting. Mortgage rates have actually come down a bit in the last 2 weeks. It's a good thing that I don't make my living trying to predict rates. The smartest guy that I know in the mortgage business is a guy named Bob McGinnis. And in answer to the question, what do you think rates are going to do? He says, I have no idea. So I'm going to break my own rule and say, I think rates are going to soften over the next year to 18 months. And certainly by 24 months from today, 2 years from today, we will see rates in the high 4s or low 5s. Beyond that, what do you need to know? Everything is volatile at the moment. Rates came down in the last 2 weeks, almost 0.5%, but they'll be back up, another 0.25% in the first half of January. You don't base your decisions on that, is what I'm saying. And we'll refinance everybody then, so it'll be like this little mini nightmare never happened. Yeah.
Does it look like the Federal Reserve is changing their posture a little bit?
They're still nervous.
They're still nervous?
Still nervous. Job numbers were extremely strong last week.
Yeah.
And we have a solid economy. I don't know why everybody's walking around mopey. The only thing that's out of whack is inflation, a big chunk of which is externally generated.
That's what I believe. I believe that the underlying problem is the fuel cost, energy cost.
Yeah. Remember always that the people who get hurt by inflation, and then at the same time when the economy cools, that means people lose jobs. It's the lower 60% of the economy. It's young people trying to get a start in life. It's working class people who are already working 2 jobs and trying to get a modest house. It's in Hilton Head, we're not impacted by that. We should feel sad about that for the 60% of the people who work in our hotels and who work in our restaurants and so forth, who are really going to feel the pressure, because buying a house now for them in Okatee or Ridgeland or wherever is going to cost $1,000 a month more.
I saw a post on social media this weekend, a 3-bedroom condo, not in a high-end section of Hilton Head Island, that a couple of years ago you would have rented for $1,500, $1,800 a month, right? $4,995 for like a 1,700 square foot. It was all fixed up, but people are just going to get crushed with those kind of living expenses.
A large part of the population is going to have to find housing further and further off island.
This week's mailbag, Shanice asks, can I use a home equity line of credit as a down payment on my next house? I think I'm ready to sell, but I'm stressing about the timeline on finding another place. It seems like leveraging my home equity in advance would ease my timeline.
Absolutely. That's called a straddle. Anybody who's trying to get into the next house while retaining the existing house is in a straddle. There are 100 different kinds of straddles. People call them also swing loans. There is no such thing as a swing loan. There are swing strategies, straddle strategies, and there's 100 of them. The trick is to, with one foot planted on the rowboat, get one foot remaining on the dock and not fall in.
Yeah.
Basically, grabbing some equity out of the house in the form of an equity line of credit, using that for the down payment on the next house. Perfectly good strategy, as long as you remember that your transaction isn't over until you've worked hard and got the old house sold. Because you don't want to end up with two houses unless in the extraordinary circumstance that's what you wanted to do in the first place.
Yes.
I mean,
she doesn't say where she's from, but what you were just talking about in terms of keeping it to rent it. If she has a great interest rate, maybe there's a plan there that builds some more equity into that house.
I'm generally, this may not be music to the ears of people in the business of selling real estate, but I'm generally cautious about folks keeping houses to rent when they buy new houses, because they're not expert at that. They're expert at being a computer IT guy. They're expert at being a videographer. They're expert at doing all kinds of things, one of which isn't real estate landlord. So, I have doctors and dentists who come to me every week and say, okay, I want to invest in real estate, and I want to get a couple of rental houses from my portfolio. And I say, look, you're blessed. You already have something that you know how to do, and you're successful at it, and you make $400,000 a year doing it. Why do you think that on the weekend you can be an expert at this really complicated rental business?
Yeah.
And maintain a house and fix the toilet that's wrong and do.
Because Grant Cardone says I can do it.
So what I try to do is say, think once, think twice. Real estate is risk, reward, and there's a third R, and that's responsibility. Owning a piece of real estate is like having an additional child.
Great advice. Great advice. The master, thank you for coming in and imparting this wonderful advice and outlook on the market with all of us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, buddy.
Thanks.
Thank you.